welcome to the Word of the Day. I am Michelle Parks. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Today I am talking about dealing with rejection. So today I'm going to try to expose the many tactics that the enemy uses and bringing rejection into our lives. There are three things that are inevitable. That's death, taxes, and I would say the third is rejection. Many, if not all of us, has experienced rejection of some sort in our lives. Rejection is the most common wound we will feel. Most people don't draw the connection, but rejection is a spirit, a demonic spirit. And for this reason, the enemy will cause rejection to come in our lives when we are young. For it alters our destiny and ultimately our personality. Rejection rests in our emotions. And some of the reactions that come with rejection are we withdraw, we become defensive, hypersensitive, we can isolate ourselves, we can put up barriers to keep people out, we can become judgmental, it can make us, rejection can make us angry, it can make us prideful. The devil, and he will flee in James 4:7. So exposure is a process to freedom. We should always seek to be delivered from those things that bind us. And what is equally as important is that we must always play a part in maintaining our own deliverance. So maintaining our deliverance is key. We should always be at a place of self-examination. We can be rejected in the womb, as a small child, as a teenager, and even in adulthood if we don't deal with it. Rejection can be from the womb. For example, if you were born a girl and your mother and father only wanted boys, it can produce rejection in your life. It can produce an identity crisis where it makes you hate who you are, because we all want to be loved and accepted. And you may desire to change your sex because of it. But you were made a girl as a result. In doing so, we never think about it, but it cuts off our own bloodlines, because God created you as a girl to birth children into the world. So now you cut it off so that all those that followed after you will never come into being based on your rejection that you experienced. Scientists show that a baby can sense rejection in the womb, and we can be rejected as a small child a lot of the time, because the enemy plans it that way in order to change our destiny. Rejection is the most common wound we will feel. Rejection makes us withdraw, it makes us defensive, it makes us hypersensitive, isolate ourselves, become detached, and like I said, put up barriers. It is the most common reason for relationship breakdown, for trauma, and for heartache. Rejection is an evil spirit. Rejection rests in our emotions. So say it with me: I bind the spirit of rejection in my life. We will all experience rejection at some point, but we should not allow it to consume us. Rejection can lead to mental illness, such as depression, such as obsessive compulsive. Many times those individuals have dealt with loss and or lack of love, which produce rejection, which makes them have mental disorders. I knew a woman who lost her mother, her father, and her husband within 6 months. And her loss caused her to hoard materials and because of the deaths. Because she had issues with things leaving. So she hoarded everything to her. So she would hold on to everything in the effort to control and keep everything she had. She didn't want to feel the pain of loss. Rejection can become a disorder if you leave it unchecked. Rejection is a reason why men withdraw from feeling like they're not respected, for being emasculated. Men interpret disrespect as rejection. The fear of rejection can cause you to stay in a bad situation as well, such as abusive relationship. Rejection can cause you to stay in a bad situation due to the fact that you don't want to feel alone anymore. It can cause abandonment. And abandonment can also stem from childhood. If a parent got divorced and they left, and the children experience that and didn't deal with it adequately, it can produce abandonment in them, where they'll stay in a bad situation because they don't want to feel the pain of loss what they did when they were a child. It becomes easier to stay. A lot of the times, children deal with sexual assault or molestation because the enemy brings it to them in order to transform their destiny. The child now feels shame because of the abuse that they've endured. And usually it walks hand in hand with rejection. Shame. Shame will cause you to believe that you're not good enough or good enough for them to save. Shame is not guilt. Shame is a focus on yourself. Well, guilt is just focus on what happened. Shame was, I am bad, but guilt is something bad happened. Shame can lead to addiction, depression, violence, aggression, bullying, eating disorders, and ultimately suicide. Shame for men can be about one thing, being perceived as weak. And shame for women can be perceived. And shame for women can be about conflicting expectations of who we should be. Shame grows out of three things when it comes to children being abused: secrecy, silence, and judgment. Secrecy because the abuser wants the child to stay silent and not speak about it, or they'll threaten the child that they'll do something to a family member in order for that child to stay silent. So we have to get a place where we pay attention to our kids' behaviors to know if something may be wrong. For this is what stops children from speaking up about sexual assault: secrecy and silence. Sexual assault imprints on our soul and we can carry it from childhood to adulthood. I knew a woman that experienced abuse in her childhood and she carried it into her 70s. So I would impress upon you, if you feel like if you have an issue with something that happened to your child, I would suggest you seek counseling, either from a minister or a licensed professional, but deal with it. Rejection from parents can especially lay the framework in changing the identity of that child. For we are shown how to interact by our parents and how we are loved by what we see our parents do. And so if our parents are very wicked, a lot of times our children will emulate the same. But if our parents were godly as well, our parents will emulate the same. Not all the time, but most of the time. We may feel rejection based on the fact that a parent left, which makes us feel inadequate. The feeling of loss causes us to feel like we are not important enough for them to stay. So it produces a rejection in us. Rejection can also produce jealousy, like with siblings. A lot of the times when the sibling is jealous, it's usually because they feel that the parent loves one child more than the other. We can see this in the life of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had 10 brothers, and Joseph's mother was different than all the other brothers except for one. So the brothers hated Joseph because they could see that their father favored Joseph by giving him nice gifts. And the brothers hated Joseph for it and ultimately conspired to kill Joseph. But one of the brothers stopped them. But they ended up selling Joseph into slavery. So we can see how rejection can produce jealousy. You can experience rejection in school through bullying. And when I was in middle school, I used to wear very thick glasses. And because of it, I was very subconscious about my glasses. And people would often ridicule me about it. But thank goodness, as I got older, and my mother gave me contact lenses, so I didn't have to wear my glasses in school anymore. So that helped a little, but I still had low self-esteem. And I tended to stay true to myself, because if I had them glasses going to high school, I never would have made it to class, because it bothered me that much. And ultimately, I had to deal with it, and my own low self-esteem, and that God delivered. But we always, because ultimately, I had laser surgery to correct my vision, because, and I had laser surgery at that time when it had just started. So it was very important to me that I corrected my vision. So I had laser surgery to make my vision 20/20. But But because of rejection, it caused low self-esteem in me, and we have to learn how to deal with that and seek God for deliverance for that. I would usually stay at home when before I got my eyes fixed, and I would stay to myself, and I withdrew, and I only played with my best friend that lived next door. So that's what rejection produced in me. In order to deal with rejection, we must consider the source or the root of where it started at. And you may have a hard time when someone breaks up or leaves, but that hurt could possibly stem from a parent who walked away, and every time it happens, you relive the same trauma. Or you may stay in a bad situation because you're out to prove you're not like the parent that left. We must learn the source of our trauma or the rejection and ask God to help us deal with it. Ask God to put a spotlight on it. As we must learn, and we must learn the root of our rejection, as it says in Matthew 3:10, and it says, "And now also the axe is laid unto the root of the trees. Therefore every tree which bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire." And I apply it to, we must take the axe to the root of that form of rejection that is rooted in us, to chop it down, to destroy it, to cast it from us. So, we must lay the axe to the root of our issue. And understanding the source of our problems is the first step toward change. No one is immune to rejection. Even Jesus experienced rejection, but Jesus didn't have a spirit of rejection. He knew who he was, he knew why he was there, he knew what he was there to accomplish. But he did experience rejection. The Sadducees and the Pharisees rejected him. They wanted him to stop preaching the truth. He says it in John 15:18, and he says, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." A lot of the time when we have rejection in relationships, sometimes pride will arise, and we don't want to leave a bad relationship because people will see that our relationship will break up. So rejection can also produce pride. You don't want people to see what you're going through. But we must press past those feelings when in bad relationships. And let's focus a little bit on abuse. When we're in abusive relationships, a lot of time a person that is rejection will stay because they don't want to experience the trauma of leaving. A lot of times pride will produce in them where they won't want anybody to see what they're going through, so they'd rather stay in that bad situation. Or my mother used to say, never stay in a abusive relationship. Never stay with someone that is detrimental to your own well-being. Even if you have to live in a shelter for a time, it's better than being in chaos. There is no greater joy than to have peace. Abuse is the enemy's opportunity to torment you. If you deal with abandonment issues, a lot of times you'll stay in that situation under the control of abusive, manipulate, and controlling individual. It is the enemy's tactics to keep you in that abusive relationship until he kills you. Because remember, he's out to kill, steal, and destroy. That's what the enemy does. But God's desire is to free you from torment. He wants you free, to have liberty, to live out life, and to be healed and whole. So I would say pray for God to open a door of escape if you feel that you are in an abusive relationship. But when he opens that door of escape, by all means, flee or run through it. Don't reason it out. Don't consider it kids. That's why they created shelters and resources in our communities to help people that need a way out. When I was younger, I had a dear friend, and one of her loved ones was in an abusive relationship for about 10 years. And the person she was with broke both of her arms and put her in the hospital. And we drove all the way up to another state, 8 hours away, to get her out of that hospital and bring her down where we lived at. But when we went up there, she would not go because of the rejection that was rooted in there. She'd rather go back to that relationship, become because she became used to dealing with it. Ultimately, over time, she did come out of it, because one of the main reasons she wouldn't leave, because she had children by this individual. So she thought it would be too hard for her to uproot all of her children. But if we don't uproot, if she would uproot her children are going to form the same dysfunction that she lived in and that she had to deal with. And that's why a lot of time people that see abuse as child end up being with abusers or become the abuser. Because if we don't deal with it as adults, if we don't deal with it as parents, our children most likely, with a strong possibility, they're going to experience the exact same thing. And it comes to, do you want something better for your child? Do you want them to not have to endure that? Do you want them to be free from that? A lot of times we will ask abusive people, well, why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave? Because it's a form of rejection that's rooted in them. Usually it's because they deal with shame, and it feels like it's what you deserve. Maybe you have low self-esteem and you feel that you deserve that. Or you may feel that you can change the person. Eventually they'll change. Or you might stay for financial reasons, because you don't feel you can go and take your kids out of school and do all that and have a place for them to live. But like I said, there are resources in our communities. And if you have to stay for a shelter for a time, just stay there for a time until you can get back on your feet. But I think it's far better to step out and on faith and pray and ask God to help us and to make a way of escape. But before you can ask God, you have to know who God is. You have to know that God truly loves you, that He wants His best for you, that He wants you to be free, that He wants you to be whole, that He loves you more than my words could ever say. It is His desire you to be free from the things that bind you. He loves you more than my mere words could ever say. The Word of God says clearly, and says it most clearly in Mark 11:24. And it says, therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them. Don't say, well, it's never going to work. Say it will work, because God's backing me, and He's going to make it work. So believe in what you pray for. Have faith in what you pray for, and I guarantee you they will work. Even though it may be a bad situation, a lot of the time we don't want to experience being alone or reliving our feelings that come from being in a broken relationship. So we'll stay in that relationship. Rejection will have you deal with a traumatic relationship rather than dealing with the pain of loss. And we need to be able to go through loss and recover. Not to stay there, not to live there, but to deal with it and recover. With someone who deals with abandonment, it becomes easier to stay. But I say that God does not want you to stay. He wants you to recover. Yes, rejection can be painful, from infidelity to a lie told about you, the words that torment your mind, to someone who walked away. But it's only supposed to be for a moment. We gotta get up, we gotta get back up, dust ourselves off, look ourselves in the mirror, and ask God's help. One of the first signs of rejection is defensiveness. To be honest, quite honest, you can even reject yourself where you don't feel like you deserve anything better. You ever wonder why you keep dealing with the same type of individuals, like if you were abused or if they were a controlling person, why you deal with that same type of individual even after you leave them and get someone else? Because the enemy knows that based on your past history, what you are willing to accept. So he brings you the same person in a different body. So if you've been in an abusive relationship, you keep wondering why you get back into a relationship with people that are abusive. It's because the devil knows what you will accept. So the first way to deal with getting a different type of individual, you're going to have to change you. Because really it's all about what you will do. Rejection can also cripple you in the area of your purpose. for it'll make you a people pleaser. So now when God wants you to do something or say something, for fear of what other people think, you won't do it. So that's how it cripples you in your purpose. You become a people pleaser. Rejection can also be hereditary. If we have a parent that dealt with unresolved rejection, they'll pass the trauma on to their child. It operates through family bloodlines. Case in point, in the Bible, the story of Judah and Tamar. It's in Genesis 38, 1 through 27. Now Judah had a father named Jacob. And God eventually would change Jacob's name into Israel, and that's where we get the nation of Israel. But Jacob had 2 wives, and Jacob had 12 sons, and Jacob also had 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. Leah was the eldest, and Rachel was the youngest. Jacob wanted to marry Rachel because she was beautiful, but Leah not so much. Leah wasn't that pleasing to the eye. She wasn't that pretty. And on the wedding night, Jacob stands before his bride. His bride has a veil over her head. And in the culture during that time, the groom didn't take the bride off the veil's head until after he married her. So after Jacob takes the veil off of the bride's head, he realizes that it's Leah. So Jacob sees that it's Leah as his bride. He becomes enraged and runs to her father, Laban, and asks him, well, why did you deceive me? I was supposed to marry Rachel. And Laban says, it's not right that my eldest daughter should remain unmarried and you should marry my youngest daughter. So Jacob ultimately had to marry them both. But over the process of time, now Leah starts having children. She starts having sons, and Rachel doesn't have any. But think about it. Leah had son after son after son, and Rachel didn't have any. Why? Because God saw that Leah was and Rachel was beloved. So he shut up Rachel's womb and opened up Leah's. So now Leah has Judah, and seeing his father's rejection of his mother. Now Judah has 3 sons. One is Er, the other is Onan, and the next one is Selah. Judah's eldest son, Er, marries a girl named Tamar. And Er dies because God sees that Er is wicked. So in the culture that they live in, when a son dies and a woman is married to him, the next brother will marry the woman and produce seed for his eldest brother who died. So Er marries Tamar. So Onan, the next brother, marries Tamar. But he didn't want to produce seed with Tamar in his brother's name. So every time he would go in to sleep with Tamar, he would spill his semen on the ground. And God saw this, and saw that it was wicked, and he killed the second brother, Onan. Now, Tamar has married 2 brothers, and they both have dropped dead. Now, anyone looking from the outside, including Judah, their father, would think that something is wrong with Tamar, but no, something's wrong with those wicked sons. Now, by culture, Judah is supposed to give his 3rd son to Tamar, so that she can marry and produce seed and have an heir. But Selah at that time is underage. So Judah tells Tamar to go back to her family's house, put her widow clothes on, and when Selah, his 3rd son, becomes of age, he'll send for her. So the years pass by, Selah becomes of age, but Judah never sends for her. Now, over the process of time, Judah's wife dies, and he goes through mourning. Then after his mourning, he decides he's going to take his sheep from Timnah. So he's traveling to Timnah. So Tamar finds out that Judah's on travel and that he's going to Timnah for the sheep shearing. And so she takes off her widow's garments and puts on a veil over her face as prostitutes of those times. And she goes by the roadside where she knows that Judah's going to be passing by. And he waits for him, and as he's passing by, he sees the prostitute on the roadside. And he remember, his wife has been dead for a while, so now he hasn't been with someone for a while, so he asks the prostitute, could he sleep with him? And the prostitute says, well, what are you going to give me in payment for me sleeping with you? And Judah says, I have my steel and my staff and my cord, and I'll use it as a pledge. And that time, a steel, a staff, and a cord were like identification. And He said, I'll use it as a pledge, and then I'll go to the sheep shearer and I'll get you a sheep. I'll bring you back the sheep, and you can give me my steel and staff and the pledge back. So they do that. So Judah goes with his friend Adullah to the sheep shearer to get the sheep to bring back to the prostitute. And as they go and look for the prostitute to give her the sheep and he can get his stuff back, she's not there. She's left. She's gone. So they're going through the men in the town trying to find out where's the prostitute. And they find out there's no prostitute around here. We don't even know what you're talking about. So they end up Judah ultimately ends up going back home. And 3 months later, as Judah's home, he finds out that his daughter-in-law Tamar is pregnant. She's played the whore, and she slept with somebody and gotten pregnant. So he says, bring Tamar to me, because we want to burn her to death and kill her for playing the whore, because that was a serious thing at that time. So it is documented in Genesis 38:23 through 26, and it says, about 3 months later, Judah was told his daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result, she is now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death. As she was being brought out to him, she sent a message to her father-in-law and said, I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. And Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give my son Selah to her. And he slept with her, never slept with her again. So Rachel was rejected because she couldn't have children. And Leah was rejected because she was unloved by her husband Jacob. Now Jacob feels some kind of way because the father-in-law tricked him from marrying a woman he didn't even want. And Judah has seen rejection all of his life through his father and mother, which can ultimately become a learned behavior. Tamar experienced rejection through Judah. So we can see from all of these how rejection can run through family bloodlines if unchecked. But ultimately, rejection can produce murder. We have not heard sometimes how someone will be rejected, and because of it, they'll go and kill the person that they were with, because, like they said, if I can't have you, no one will, because a rejection is rooted in them, and they did the ultimate thing by taking another's life. And ultimately, rejection can also produce suicide, where we're so rejected that it becomes burdensome and we don't even want to be here anymore. We don't even want to deal with it. In conclusion, rejection is a diabolical spirit and that we must contend with. We must break those unhappy, unhealthy habits and emotions. We have to be honest with God and ask Him to help us and take us through the process of getting rid of past trauma and those things that bind us. We must ask God for His help. To be honest, we don't take into account that we are rejected. God has to put a spotlight on us. So our prayer should always be, Lord, if you see anything within my life that you feel that I need to change, please reveal it to me that change may come in my life. So we have daily affirmations that describe how God sees us when relating to rejection. And one is Deuteronomy 28:13, and it says, I am the head and not the tail. I am above and not beneath. Or Psalms 139:14, where it says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Say them until it becomes a part of who you are. For we should see ourselves as God sees us, not about our circumstance, but as He sees us. So I'd like to say a brief prayer. Show us where there might be any form of rejection in our lives. May your words and your will be manifest in our lives. May we take to heart everything that you have spoken today, that it would affect change in our lives, put a spotlight on those issues that we may be dealing with, so that we can be renewed, so that we can be set free and be fit for your use. I pray this and all prayers in your name, Jesus. Amen. I thank you for joining me today. I thank you for taking this opportunity today. Please like, share, and by all means subscribe. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified when future videos are uploaded. And this is the word of the day, and I am Pastor Michelle Parks. Be blessed on purpose, and thank you.